Hi, Florette here, and thank you for joining me here at Ink on 3 for this fun introduction of Atelier Artist Grade Fusion Ink and the case of the disappearing purple pumpkin. I'll get into what that means in just a bit. So for this project, we'll need some clean clear water, the Fade Out No Line coloring ink along with the Atelier ink. I'm using mixed media paper by Strathmore with a vellum surface. I love this paper for watercoloring. It's my new favorite. I stamped up my image a couple times with fade out ink. You can stamp it once for a very light color. You can stamp it multiple times depending on the lighting that you're in. It works perfect no matter how many times you stamp it. So I'm going to grab the Atelier My Jam Purple and we're going to do a little wet on wet coloring. And what that means is I just took some clean clear water and put it on the surface of my paper, just enough to give it a light glisten. Because of the formulation of the Atelier ink, it is designed to watercolor with. It also stamps beautifully. You're going to get bright, clean, clear images. And as you add water, it's going to stay bright and pretty, true to its color. You're going to love the vibrance of this ink even after it dries. It has a lot of pigment in it, and by pigment I mean the color. So it's very much like a high-end watercolor. So if you add water to it, you're going to be able to get that dark color all the way down to the mid-tones and the light colors very easily. So it blends out nicely. You're not going to lose the color the second you add water to it. Also going to get some beautiful undertones as you watercolor with it. What I'm doing is adding color to the bottom and the top of the pumpkin sections. Then take clean clear water and blend the edge. I'm going to put a little music on, then I'll be back right after I finish the purple section. Once I was finished coloring my purple pumpkin, I dried it with a heat gun, and look how pretty that turned out. Now it's time to get into the case of the disappearing purple pumpkin. We have a beautiful purple pumpkin, but before your eyes, I'm going to transform it into an entirely different color. And how can I do that? Because of the Atelier's amazing ability to layer colors. And I chose this purple because I wanted to show you how I can layer even a yellow over the purple, and you can see it's starting to transform already. Once I added a little yellow, I'm going to add some marigold orange and turn this into an orange pumpkin. It's going to be fun. So sit back and relax. I'll put a little music on and I'll be right back as soon as Now I've got a really nice base layer of orange, but I want to deepen, I want to make that a richer color. So here's where the Watercolor Reinkers come into play. The Reinkers for the Atelier ink double as watercolors, and that's what they were designed for. They're going to give you an even deeper, more rich color than the ink pads will. So I dropped a little bit out onto my mat. I shook the container really well first because you got to shake them really good. And I'm dipping in and I'm putting on my next layer using a really fine tip paintbrush, and I'm just barely touching into the watercolor reinker because they're very strong in color, and then I blend it out with clean clear water. So I'm going to go around and do this and put a little music on, sit back and relax, and I'll be back when I finish this section in just a bit. Okay, can you tell me where the purple pumpkin went? I colored that with my own eyes, and you watched me with your own eyes. It's hard to believe that that was a purple pumpkin when we started this video tutorial. It's a beautiful, pretty, bright orange now. This is one of the amazing qualities of the Atelier Artist Grade Fusion ink. I can watercolor with it, dry it, and add layers on top of that. And I'm not going to wind up with a muddy mess. And I'm also able to put light colors on top of dark colors and just get all these beautiful colors mixing and flowing together without getting a muddy mess. The other thing you'll notice is even after it's dry, it still stays very bright and true to its color. Now I'm going to grab the bee sting yellow and even add more yellow on top of that orange, just because I wanted it to be really bright and cheerful and pretty, and I wanted all of those fall colors just moving around and mixing together. So I'm going to dry it again, and next I'm going to grab some of the Twiggy Brown, and I'm going to add some depth and dimensions with some shadowing. The things I really love is I can continue to add more and more layers, giving more and more dimension to my image, and it just creates so much interest. And the reason I can continue to do this and blend it without destroying my paper or muddying it up is the ink, the Atelier ink is very buttery smooth, and it's just gliding along, and it also is very forgiving. Even after it dries, I can go back and blend out any imperfections I have or change things, and I'm going to show you a little of that in just a minute. So now I'm taking the Twiggy Brown and I'm just dipping into it straight into the pad. That's the other thing I love, is I can dip right into the ink pad to grab my color. And I'm just going into those little nooks and crannies and creating a little depth and dimension and some shadowing. And you can see how much that really rounds it out. So don't be afraid to add some darker colors and some shadows. The great thing is, if I don't like that darkness with the Atelier ink, because of the nature of the formulation, I can go back later and change that and lighten it. And I'm going to show you how we can do that a little bit later in this video. You can see how much the darkness adds to the pumpkin. It's really becoming more lifelike, and it's getting so much dimension. So now I'm going to grab just a little bit of the painted black and even get a little bit darker. So try not to be afraid of it. Just add a little bit. Like I said, with the Atelier ink, you can always go back and lighten it. It's really, truly amazing. So I went ahead and colored the other pumpkin in the same way we colored the first pumpkin. Now I'm going to get into overworking your project and how Atelier will let you do that. And I can overwork it and keep adding, and that's what I'm going to do on this leaf. I'm just going to keep working and adding, and more water and more ink and more water and more ink. And it's amazing that I am able to save this and fix it and end up with a beautiful project, even though I totally messed this up. But like I said, I did this on purpose so that I can show you what we can do. I just have to say, where's the purple pumpkin? Can you even believe it? I look at this and I still can't believe that that pumpkin started out in this video as a purple pumpkin, because look how vibrantly orange it is, and look at all the beautiful shadowing and everything. It just amazes me, and I think you'll be amazed too when you start to play with it. You are absolutely going to love it, and it's great for the beginner and great for the advanced because it's so forgiving. You can change things, you can overwork a project, and still wind up with a beautiful image in the end. You'll notice I finished that leaf over to the right, and it's very dark. It does look pretty, and I thought it was way worse when I was actually coloring it, and I kept messing with it and messing with it and messing with it. And normally I would have had to just throw the image away and just be done with it. But we're going to go back and we're going to lighten it so that it matches the other leaf on the other side. Oh, sorry, forgot to tell you, I actually colored that leaf in too, kind of like in the same fashion we did the pumpkins. So now I'm going around and I'm putting color onto all the other little pieces in this. And I'm really liking how everything looks, except for that really dark leaf on the other side. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. The other thing that's really great is, you know how sometimes if you do wind up using too much water, you'll wind up with like watermarks or strange lines, things like that. The beautiful thing is I can let it dry And then I can go back and add water to it and blend out any imperfections that I feel I want to get rid of. So the next thing I decide to do is grab some Twiggy Brown from the Watercolor Reinker and add a little more depth and dimensions to all of the other pieces. So are you ready to lighten that leaf? Okay, let's get to it. So what I'm doing here is I put some clean, clear water on my mat with my water brush pen, and I'm adding it to the darkest sections, and those are really dark sections. They have a lot of dark brown in them. And I'm taking a paper towel. Once I dab on some water with my brush, I take the paper towel and let it set a second and then dab it off. And look at it's already lightening up a lot. And I can just keep adding water and then dabbing it with my paper towel, and you can see how much lighter I got it. And I thought that was light enough. I like the nice undertones, and I thought I could really work with that well. So I grabbed some of the Bee Sting Yellow from the Watercolor Reinker, put some on my mat, and I'm going to start adding some of the yellow in there and start layering those colors because I can, because you can layer it. It's just amazing. Of course, after I dabbed off all that color, I did make sure to dry that section before I started layering the next color. Next, I take a little of the Marigold Orange from the Watercolor Reinker, drop a tiny bit on my multimedia mat, and I'll have a link to that in the description too because it's a really awesome mat. So I'm taking my brush, cleaning it off with clean, clear water in between, and blending out that Marigold Orange. I'll lay a bit on, and then I will clean my brush, go in and blend it out from the edge. So I'm never going into the deepest part of it. I'm just going onto the edge that meets the other colors and blending it out. Then I grab some of the Twiggy Brown, which I already had on my mat, and I'm adding some of the veins to the leaves, and you can see it's really coming together and starting to look like the leaf on the other side. So now we have two things that have completely changed, like the purple pumpkin. Again, where did the purple pumpkin go? Just kidding. But also, that leaf was so dark, and you probably can't even remember how dark it was because of how bright and pretty it's looking now. And it's got some nice depth, some dimension. And like I said, normally before I would have had to throw this away and start all over again. So then I decide to add a little more shadow, a little more depth. Now, most times I probably wouldn't work on and color and rework an image as much as I'm doing in this one. But I really wanted to show you how many layers I could add, how much water I could put on, and how many changes I could make. Then I look at it and I see I've gone outside the lines a little bit, but I can correct that too. So finally, I decide it's good. And let's add a little bit of bling to it. So I reach for my liquid pixie dust, I shake it up real good, and I drop a little on my mat. Now normally you'd probably cringe at putting a shimmer on top of all that watercoloring. But that's what's amazing about liquid pixie dust. It also glides across the top. And you can see as I'm adding it, I'm not moving all my watercoloring all over. It really does keep everything in place and just kind of glides over the surface. And when it's dry, it's also not going to come off of my image. That's what the other thing that's great about liquid pixie dust is it's a shimmer that stays on your project. You can rub it with your hand and everything after it's dry, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. I'm going to rub my hand on it, and look at that. Nothing's coming off. And look at my image. All my beautiful coloring is still there. Now back to Atelier. It also is great for blending with blending brushes to give you those beautiful soft backgrounds. And here I'm going to take some of the painted black. I'm going to add some water to it on my multimedia mat and do some splatters. So it also can do that, and it's really fun. Oh gosh, I'm back to liquid pixie dust because I love giving some shimmer. I thought this needed a little more shimmer, and look at what that splattering of the liquid pixie dust did. I wanted to have a completed card, so I just put some foam tape on, popped it onto the card front, and there we have this beautiful card. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and please hit the subscribe button. And I'll be back for more tips and tricks with Atelier because there is so much more that you can do with this ink. It truly is amazing. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.